Hello, everyone. Um, Cheers to my family of Anarchapulco, to everyone free, to every freedom group around the world, to my friends of Unity 13 Spirituality and the Conscious Collective. And welcome for you if this is the first time you are watching this video. First of all, I want to apologize to my brothers and sisters in Puerto Vallarta because it's not possible for me to travel this time due to I need to fix some issues here. I truly intended to share this talk to you in person during the meetup next April the 1st under the full moon night. And I'm gonna share a presentation with you. Okay, I hope you are watching it now. And but anyways, I am sharing this talk virtually, and with this, I am trying to explain the energy of this full moon associated with freedom, something we are looking consciously or unconsciously. And maybe tonight I am not saying anything new because many of us already have a clear idea about what freedom means. Hmm. However, I want to bring the definition used by Curtis Stone, whose conference was entitled More Freedom Than You Can Deal With. And he said freedom is the power or right to uh, act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. The state of being free, liberty, self determination, absence of restraint, and the opposite of slavery. And analyzing this definition, I want to go deeper into the concepts of freedom and liberty. Because in Spanish, my first language, doesn't exist that distinction. In Spanish, we only have the word libertad. But here, I want to go deeper in the concept of freedom, liberty, and their opposite, slavery. And the meaning of these words might seem obvious by opposition. However, by doing this exercise, I realized something interesting about the origin and evolution of these words, starting with the word freedom, which comes from Old English freedom, which is composed by freedom equal to free and dom like a state, condition, or domain. So the word free comes from Proto-Germanic frias, equal to free, beloved, or not in bondage, and from Proto-Indo-European roots, pray, with meaning to love, or to be dear. So if we were using that old concept, that could easily means that is the state or condition to love or being dear. But maybe we are more familiar with this recently meaning as the state or condition of being free. This last concept is more familiar with the first definition used by Cortes relating to the word power as a state or a condition. Okay. Then now let's see the origin of the word liberty, which comes from Latin libertas, derived from liber, and that word entered English through Old French liberté. So in ancient Rome, Its meaning was about being recognized as free under the law. In other words, freedom as a condition to be free had a legal and social status. It depended on citizenship, rights, and recognition. Then slavery comes from Latin esclavus and evolved through the Old French esclave, going to the Middle English slave, up to the word we know now, slave. However, this originally referred to the Slavic people from Eastern Europe, but later become a general term for anyone in a condition of servitude or ownership. And analyzing these concepts, freedom refers to the natural capacity of the individual to act, think, or express themselves without external restriction. It's more instinctive, internal, and essential. And it relates to the nature of being. It can and actually exists even without political structures or even before them, according to natural law. However, the Latin concept of liberty referred to a person who is legally free, a non-slave, recognized within Roman society. And as far as we know, Western law system is based on the Roman law. So the early meaning of liberty referred to a person legally free, legal freedom, a status of citizen and protection under law. Later, the meaning changed to civil rights, political freedom, and protection from unjust authority. Unlike freedom, which comes from a native Germanic root, liberty is a borrowed term shaped by legal and political systems. It carries the idea of freedom as something defined, structured, and protected within society. And this reveals a key distinction where freedom is internal, natural, and essential, and liberty is external, legal, and constructed. And here the liberty depends on laws, institutions, agreements, and it can be granted, limited, or expanded. So the key difference between these two concepts is that freedom arises from individual self-love, understood as consciousness, essence, and nature, while liberty is a collective construction established in laws, rights, and agreements. Although this distinction appears particularly in the English language, and I don't know why, but it is very important to mention that when governments speak about freedom, they are actually referring to liberty, and they use the term in this way to place what is legally recognized above the individual's true freedom. Now let's study what slavery refers to. During the early Middle Age, many Slavic people were captured in wars, and they were frequently sold into servitude across Europe and the Mediterranean. Because of this widespread practice, the word for Slav, became associated with slave. Interestingly, unlike freedom's roots in love and belonging, the word slavery is rooted in historical domination and human exploitation. With this, the very origin of the word slavery let us know that systems of domination have been normalized through history, and over time, the term expanded to describe physical bondage, social control, even manipulating internal states of limitation. And that implies the conditioning in which a person is treated as property, deprived of autonomy, and subjected to the will and control of another or others. And that includes loss of self governance, coercion and domination, and the inability to act according to one's own will. In a deeper sense, slavery is any state in which a human being doesn't belong to themselves, whether due to external control or internal limitations. And here I want to we can distinguish the above slavery types in internal, unconscious, and external slavery. So when we talk about internal slavery, we are talking about fear, ignorance, limiting beliefs, social conditioning, lack of emotional or mental self mastery, and ego. Referring to unconscious slavery, we can distinguish living on autopilot, not questioning the reality, or delegating one's own power. And external slavery reflected on their system of political or economic control, force or deceptive dependency, impose authority, which is everything that we are all dealing with as human species now. Then at this point, now we can differentiate freedom from slavery. Uh, Freedom as conscious self mastery or self determination, and slavery as inability to govern oneself internally, consciously, unconsciously, or externally. Okay, now that this distinction have been established, let's move into tonight's main topic, which is why the full moon in the Aries zodiac sign represents the energy of freedom or liberation. And I want to start saying that when we incarnate into this physical existence, the divine and infinite essence that we are becomes limited and conditioned by the capacities of the physical body or the conscious level. And that happens when we become in somehow a slaves of this reality. Why? Because we incarnate and develop within a body with needs, a pre-existing system of beliefs, material, social, and cultural conditions, including laws, and an environment we didn't choose. This is where astral influences come into the game. And we are born into a reality we neither choose or control. Then, because astral influence is not visible, it is also difficult to perceive it or understand them. And they are very present at the birth moment because there are planetary positions, energetic patterns, cycles already in motion. I'm sorry, my dog. However, astrology is part of the initial conditioning, not the final destiny. Besides, I'm sorry, my dog. He wants to participate too. Besides, astrologically influences don't operate in just one dimension. They interact they interact with all levels of the being. In the physical level, astrological cycles can influence energy levels, biological rhythms. She doesn't want me to talk tonight. I'm sorry. Sensitivity to environment, and here the moon affects tides and symbolically the fluids of the body. In the emotional level, the moon plays an it's a stronger role, affecting emotions, reactions, and subconscious patterns. Here, astrological influence can create emotional tendencies, fluctuations, patterns, or attachments of fear, especially in those zodiac signs of water. I mean, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. In the intellectual level, astrology can influence how we process information or communication style, mental patterns, and some tendencies toward overthinking, impulsivity, or rigidity. In the spiritual level, astrology represents the framework of experience the soul navigates. However, it doesn't limit your essence, but it shapes the experience we have to overcome. In the collective level, astrological cycles also affect on cultural trends, collective emotions, and social movements. And this is why entire societies move through similar patterns, and those who control masses are very aware of these influences too. In that sense, this initial slavery is part of the condition of incarnating, since this is what it is, looks like it's being created in the way by design, in that way by design. Within this context, we begin to identify ourselves with everything around us, and it seems that we forget that we are in essence. But in the process of growing, something else happens. Something that seems to be either intentionally designed and emerges from our divine or natural essence, which knows no limits. With this, I'm trying to say the desire of looking for freedom embedded within our most essential being. Then we feel that impulse that make us uncomfortable when we are not being authentic, pushes us to question, invite us to grow, and remind us that there is something else, something greater than all those limitations. It is like an inner memory of what we truly are, and that drives us to expand beyond our initial limitations across those dimensions I mentioned: the physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and in the collective um, level. But returning to astral influences, I can say from Kabbalistic astrology that we face 12 key astrological stages around the year. Like the last full moon in the month of Pisces was associated with energy of party and wisdom. So I remember having a couple of wonderful parties or meetups last month. But tomorrow's full moon is associated with freedom or liberation and has to do with the idea of passing over the dead. We have to overcome something that doesn't exist anymore or doesn't work anymore. And this celebration is understood in different ways in different traditions around the world. As Kel mentioned, we are going to experience the true beginning of the new year or the beginning of the astrological cycle. So Pisces is the last zodiac sign and represent finishing cycles. Then in Aries, we have the energy of beginning to start something new. Then in in Pisces, we have the wisdom of experiencing those 12 astrological influences around the cycle. Then these two those zodiac signs have a similar energy, which is containing the 12 zodiac signs. Aries potentially and Pisces experientially. But still, there is a 13th stage of the astrological cycle, which is all of them together, all of them together, or staying over astrological influences. From Kabbalah studies, this is associated with the unity or love. And because Aries Moon has potentially the energy of the 12 zodiac influences, each of them are contained in the first 12 moons of the cycle. I mean, the moon cycle in the month of Aries. And how can we overcome astral influences in this month? By meditating, facing, and dealing with negative aspects of each zodiac sign associated with each of the 12 first moons of the of Aries month. Then we have as following in the first moon, which was like 2 weeks ago. The Aries negativity is beginning without completing. In the second, in Taurus, looking for comfort. Gemini, not listening to others. Cancer, hiding who they truly are. Leo, exposing their big ego. Virgo makes judgments. And Libra doesn't trust. And we have the Scorpio, who uses yelling words. Sagittarius, feeling guilty. Capricorn, the materialism. Aquarius, the desire of controlling. And in Pisces, the emotional rational imbalance. And in the 13th moon, which is tonight's moon, we have the unity or the love to understand others. Understanding somehow we are all of them because we have experienced the 12 zodiac signs along the year, placing ourselves above astral influences. Then in the 14th moon, we have to search where our ego is and transforming it into desire to give, or in other words, love. Uh, in the 15th moon, consequently, in the full moon, we reach the freedom, that internal freedom we were talking about, where we move from fear, ignorance, and ego to achieve emotional and mental self mastery. Like I said, freedom requires transformation, and here makes sense the origin of the word freedom as that state or condition to love or be dear. And that means loving ourselves first. And I also mentioned transformation requires letting something die. Uh, I am talking about old identities, limiting beliefs, including that we are defined or controlled by external influences, emotional dependencies, unconscious patterns, and most important, ego, which sometimes seems impossible. However, sometimes we do it when we do something genuinely in benefit of others. For that reason, tomorrow's moon energy focuses in identifying our ego and transforming it into desire to give. It's not an easy job. For searching that transformation, we have the positive aspects of Aries influences, and that is courage, individual will, and most important, action. However, the true meaning of liberation um, is in that personal and individual path. Just like Catherine said, the search for the search for freedom requires personal, deep work, and that's why I've chosen this picture because represents that personal and lonely path from the physical experience in a long, hard road toward the illumination or to that greater being we actually are and we don't recognize. But this full moon represents a helpful, powerful influencing energy to let go what doesn't work for us anymore. And having the strength to begin a new cycle where we decide freely by ourselves what we want to become, or start choosing to be who we truly are. Thank you. And please, if you want to share your comments here, please feel free to do it. Or you have my contact in Telegram or WhatsApp for questions and comments. And with this, I only want to say that I hope to see you soon, guys. Thank you again.